Imagine this. You and your best friend are trapped in an underwater cave hundreds of feet below the surface. You realize you only have enough oxygen left for one of you to make it out alive. What do? Play rock, paper, scissors? Sit there and wait for the end together. In this true story, both men actually made it out alive. What kind of impossible decision did they make to pull off a 60-hour extreme survival miracle? This is the story we're breaking down today. Surviving the Sa Piqueta cave. Sa Piqueta is one of the most dangerous underwater cave systems in the world. It's a narrow, winding maze completely submerged in seawater, with over 1.8 miles of it explored so far. The cave is full of tricky forks and tight squeeze points. But the real killer, the silt on the cave floor, fine as flour, just a light brush against it reduces visibility to absolute zero in a split second. Worse yet, the water in the cave is entirely stagnant. The kicked-up silt doesn't wash away. It just hangs there in the water for hours, sometimes an entire day. Because of this, only the absolute elite of cave divers ever dare to explore it. On April 15, 2017, two of these top-tier divers geared up to enter this deadly cave. Xisco, Gràcia, a true legend in the field with 24 years of cave diving experience. Guillem, Mascaró, an expert in his own right, already boasting 20 years of diving experience. They had been dive buddies for years. This time, they weren't thrill-seeking. They were on the clock for a real job, mapping out the cave to create a more accurate chart. That morning, they dove in, following the safety guideline through the tunnels, and quickly reached their work zone. Xisco took the measurements while Guillem handled the lighting and took notes. They made great time. Just as they were wrapping up and getting ready to head back, disaster struck. Guillem's fin accidentally swept across the silt on the bottom. It was just a light touch, but instantly, a thick cloud of mud exploded around them. It was like someone threw a bucket of ink right in your face. Guillem reached out instinctively to grab the guideline, but in the panic, he not only missed it, he accidentally yanked the line right off the rock wall. With zero visibility and no guideline to follow, finding the exit was virtually impossible. They each had about 40 minutes of oxygen left, but the exit was an hour away. If they tried to swim out together, they'd both die down there. Disoriented in the panic, they missed the route they originally came from. But just then, they felt an upward crevice. Xisco squeezed through and found himself inside an air pocket. Hanging out in there wasn't a permanent fix. After a quick, intense chat, Xisco and Guillem realized they had to make a massive gamble. Xisco decided to give all of his remaining oxygen to Guillem so his buddy could make a mad dash for help. Why? Because Guillem was smaller, consumed less oxygen, and was younger and fitter. Xisco would stay behind and wait for rescue. In that moment, Xisco placed all his hopes on his best friend. Guillem set off with tears in his eyes. Would he actually find the exit? Even if he made it out, could Xisco hold on long enough for a rescue team to find their way back to that exact air pocket? Neither of them knew. Xisco was left all alone in the air chamber, relying purely on willpower to endure the freezing cold and pitch-black darkness. The most terrifying part? The carbon dioxide levels in there were as high as 5%. For context, the normal air we breathe has a CO2 level of about 0.04% to 0.05%. Anything significantly higher becomes incredibly hard for your lungs to filter out. This meant his lungs had to work at 100 times their normal rate just to offset the damage. Prolonged exposure leads to CO2 poisoning, causing dizziness, blackouts, and in severe cases, respiratory arrest or sudden death. Worse still, with every breath Xisco took, the oxygen level dropped and the CO2 level spiked even higher. Xisco tried hard to calm his nerves to save oxygen. Soon, he started hallucinating. He heard noises outside, and even though he knew his mind was playing tricks on him, he couldn't help but listen. At one point, he heard the distinct sound of a heavy drill directly above him. Then, it stopped and never started again. That was the moment his hope hit rock bottom. He became absolutely certain that Guillem had died trying to get out, and no one was coming for him. He grabbed his dive knife, contemplating ending it all right there. But the thought of his wife and kids back home made him put the knife down. In reality, Guillem had managed to find the exit in less than an hour. The second he hit the surface, he called 911. However, the rescue operation was a nightmare. The first team dove in, but the silt Guillem kicked up still hadn't settled. Visibility was zero, forcing them to turn back empty-handed. Then, they brought in a drilling rig, but the rock at Sa Piqueta was too hard, and aggressively drilling through could cause the air pocket to collapse. The drilling sound Xisco heard earlier was exactly this attempt. On April 17th, Xisco's third day trapped, his good friend Bernat dove in for another attempt. He noticed the water was finally clearing up. The mud that had been suspended for 3 days had finally settled to the floor. After 2 hours underwater, Bernat found the snapped guideline Xisco had left behind. He followed it into the air pocket and found Xisco. He was pale as a ghost and barely conscious, but he was alive. Because Xisco was incredibly weak and had zero strength to swim, Bernat, being a seasoned pro, didn't risk dragging him out right away. Instead, he left behind spare oxygen tanks and supplies to help Xisco regain some strength. Bernat then headed back to the surface alone to round up a crew for a safer, full-scale extraction. Shortly after, the rescue team followed Bernat's line straight to the pocket. Xisco had recovered some energy, but to play it safe, they took it extremely slow on the way back. After a grueling 2-hour swim, they finally saw the light at the cave entrance. At 11:30 p.m. on April 17, 2017, Xisco was pulled from the water. He had been trapped in that dark, toxic air pocket for a grueling 60 hours. Xisco was rushed to the emergency room. When he finally woke up, his very first question was, "Is Guillem alive?" When he was told his buddy was safe and sound, he finally broke down and cried. The most moving part of this story isn't just the sheer will to survive, it's the fact that in the darkest possible moment, someone chose to give up their chance at life for someone else, and that other person fought like hell to make sure that sacrifice wasn't in vain. The people you trust won't let you down. Xisco bet his life on it, and Guillem proved it. That's a wrap on today's story. See you next time.